So last year I uploaded a video about 9 passive income ideas that were making me $27,000 a week at the time, and that video absolutely blew up, and since then I've been inundated with messages from like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the places of people asking for more ideas for side hustles that they can start this year. So in this video we're going to go over 7 side hustle ideas that you can start to make money on the internet if you want, and for each of these we're going to talk about how easy it is to start, how easy it is to make your first $100, and then how hard or time intensive is it to keep going. So let's get into it. Right, so idea number 1 is actually to become a video editor for YouTubers. Now bear with me over here. This is actually not as crazy as it sounds. It's pretty straightforward to learn how to edit videos. I even have a class on this on Skillshare, link in the video description if you want to check it out. And so within a weekend, you can literally teach yourself how to edit videos using Final Cut or Premiere or iMovie or DaVinci Resolve or any other app. You can teach yourself how to edit videos completely from scratch, having never done it before. And then if we want to make money using the service, we just need to find people who are willing to pay for that service. Now, conveniently, YouTubers always need someone to edit their videos. Once you're beyond maybe a few tens of thousands of subscribers, maybe 20K plus, basically every YouTuber would benefit from having an editor that they can outsource their editing to. And at that point, most YouTubers are also making enough money to support the service. And at that point, most YouTubers also don't enjoy editing themselves. And so they're like desperate to find someone who can help them edit their videos. Now, if someone is a YouTuber in that position, they might be going on a website like Fiverr or Upwork or People Per Hour and looking for an editor who they can outsource editing to. And I've done this a few times, and hundreds of my students in the Part-Time YouTuber Academy have done this as well. And what you find is that all of the response, like 95% of the responses are absolute trash, i.e. people don't read the description properly, they're completely unprofessional in their communication, and they're just really bad at video editing. And so to stand out in one of these marketplaces, it's actually reasonably straightforward. All you have to do is communicate well and actually read the brief that the person is given rather than copy and pasting it. Now that's one way of doing it, where you're essentially waiting for people to come to you, waiting for people to choose you, but there is another way of doing it, and that other way involves being a permissionless apprentice. So what you could do, for example, is you could find a YouTuber that you like who's maybe on 50K to 250K subscribers. You can download one of their videos from YouTube and you can edit it in a different way. You can add in some more lower thirds, some effects, some titles, some transitions, some background music. And then what you can do is you can reach out to that YouTuber on Twitter or Instagram or email and say, hey, I'm a video editor, I would love to edit videos for you. Here is an example of what I've done using some of your content. And if you do this with just a handful of YouTubers, I can basically guarantee that at least one of them will respond and be like, oh my God, that sounds sick. Then the thing you ask them is like, hey, why don't you give me one of your raw videos and I'll edit it for you completely free of charge so you can see what my work is like. And then after that, you know, I charge $50 a video or $100 a video. And you're telling your pricing up front so they know what the vibe is and they can decide, can they afford this? But you're offering to do that first video for free. So A, they've already seen your skills because you've edited their video without permission. B, you're giving them this free trial so they can see how you're doing. And then if all that goes well, they're going to be paying you lots of money to edit their videos. And this model of becoming a permissionless apprentice is applicable to loads of things other than video editing as well. You could become a podcast editor. You could be a thumbnail artist. Like, I'm just thinking in the realm of creators here. You could be someone who converts someone's email newsletter into an Instagram carousel that they can post on their Instagram account. You can be someone who takes long form video content off of YouTube and turns it into 9x16 TikTok friendly content with the animations and the music and stuff. There's all of this stuff that you can do. All it needs is number 1, having the skills, which you can learn for free on the internet within a few days. And number 2, having a little bit of creativity and ingenuity and the ability to communicate well via email or via Twitter to find the people who are then going to ultimately pay you for the service. So how easy is this to start? Pretty easy. You just need to learn the skill. Again, not very hard. You can follow YouTube tutorials. It takes about a weekend. How easy is it to make your first $100? Again, not that hard, to be honest, probably 2 out of 5 stars, because you can post a bunch of projects on Upwork and Fiverr and People Per Hour with these freelance websites, and you can also just reach out to your YouTuber friends. So making $100 shouldn't be too hard in this context. But the only drawback with this is that it is pretty time intensive, and I'd give this a 5 out of 5 in terms of time intensivity, because ultimately when you're selling a service like this, you are kind of charging for your time. And generally when you're charging for your time, rather than building something and selling it where you're not charging for your time, that tends to become pretty time intensive. All right, side hustle number 2 is online tutoring. And this is how most of my friends when we were at university made the bulk of our side hustle money, through tutoring people on the internet. And the best way to think about this is that wherever you are on your journey, there's probably some stuff that you know that someone a few years younger than you could benefit from. So for example, when I was like 18 years old, I signed up to this online tutoring agency and I started tutoring people at like kind of 15 to 17 year olds in maths and science. Then when I got to university, sort of aged 19 through to 24, I was tutoring people who were applying to medical school, helping them out with the entrance exams. I've got friends who are currently working as doctors who are doing online tutoring for medical students, and a few friends who have completely random jobs that they're doing, but what they do tutoring in is in languages. So one of my friends, for example, speaks French natively, and he's an online French teacher. So he teaches people French over the internet for about like £30 an hour, about $40 an hour, or something like that. And this is actually pretty easy to do. All it needs, again, that you need to have a skill or something that you have learned that someone else will will find valuable. And then you just need to find people who are willing to pay for that skill. So usually you can sign up for an account for these online tutoring platforms. The one in the UK, I think, that I used to use was called UK Tutors. And there's an example of another friend of mine from med school who had one of these accounts on one of these like online tutoring websites and ended up tutoring someone who turned out to be the daughter of like some Nigerian royal family connection. And then they liked him so much that they flew him out in their private jet, like for a whole summer, to tutor their kids while they were going to these cool places all around the world. And he said that was a pretty sick experience. I'm not saying that if you start online tutoring, you're going to get that level of treatment, but what I'm saying is that it's a very good way of teaching something that you know to people who are willing to pay for that thing to be taught to them. And the other option along a similar vein is a website called italki. And I've got a few friends who teach like languages through that. It's kind of like a language teaching thing, but it's not really teaching. It's like if you speak English, you can sign up for an account on italki and people will pay for you to just have a conversation with them over Zoom in English. And generally, it's people from abroad who want to improve their English by having conversations with an English speaker. If you want to teach on italki, then it usually starts somewhere between $4 and $8 an hour, but you can always up your prices over time. And one friend I know is making, I think, a few $100s a month from doing just like a few hours of italki, like English language tutoring each month. And this stuff, to be honest, is pretty simple. It's not easy because you need to have the skill and you need to be able to market yourself to get people to pay for that skill. And then you need to actually be good at teaching the thing. But to be honest, there are no easy ways to make money. Like all ways to make money require an exchange of value in return for money. And in this case, the value you're providing is the ability to teach something. Sometimes people get held back by thinking they need a formal teaching qualification, but you don't need any formal qualifications. This is one of those things where if you have learned something and you are just good at explaining it, then you probably can teach that thing to someone. You can practice on your friends, you can practice on family, practice on your kids, practice on your colleagues, whatever. And so in terms of ease of getting started, I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 5 because you do need to have that skill to begin with. But hey, if you're watching this video, you probably have some kind of skill that you can teach to someone over the internet. It's not too hard to make your first $100. I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 5. All you have to do, again, is be able to market yourself appropriately on the various tutoring websites that are relevant to you. But again, the problem is that this is a pretty time-intensive thing because you are doing a direct trade, time for money, and generally you're being paid by the hour. So the more hours you put in, the more money you're gonna make. All right, so side hustle idea number 3 is to actually become a website designer and to design websites for a niche group of clients. How do you become a website designer? These days it's actually not that hard. Like back in the day when I was first learning web design, you had to learn HTML and CSS and all that kind of stuff. These days there are so many no-code ways of building a website, like Squarespace and Wix and I don't know, these other like drag and drop type website builders that are pretty reasonable. It's also pretty easy to learn WordPress. You know, WordPress powers like 30% of the internet. You can download WordPress themes for free. You can customize them for free. They're not that hard. And you can watch YouTube tutorials that teach you how to customize a WordPress theme. So again, within about, probably, I won't say a weekend, probably about a week, you can learn how to make a website and how to make it look good if you're using something like Squarespace or Wix or WordPress. So now you've got this skill that could be valuable to some people. And now you just need to find people who are willing to pay you for the skill. So the trick here is to not appeal to absolutely everyone, but instead appeal to a very, very, very niche group of people. So there are 2 people that I'm currently thinking of who have done this very well. One of them is a guy who I connected with through this YouTube channel, and he and I met up for coffee about 2 years ago when I was in Cambridge. Turned out he had taught himself web design, and he specialized in building websites for orthodontists in like 1 or 2 states in America, like somewhere in the middle of America. This is pretty niche. Like that was the only thing he provided. He just reached out to all of the orthodontists in like Utah and some other state, I can't remember what. And he said to them, hey, look, you know, I specialize in building websites for orthodontists. I can make your website look prettier. It'll increase your leads. It'll help more people sign up to your Invisalign, whatever. And after sending a few dozen cold emails, he hopped on a few phone calls, and then he ended up being paid like $500 to make his first orthodontist website. And then after that, he went to other orthodontists in the area and be like, hey, I've worked on this website. Here's what it looks like. And it looked good. And those other guys were like, sick, I want to hire you to build my orthodontist website. And then he upped his prices slowly over time to the point that he was able to travel the world, literally just building websites for orthodontists. And then the next thing he did after that was that he started going into like paid ads and helping them run their Google ads. And so he was just like traveling the world, making a living as a digital nomad, starting off making websites for orthodontists and then selling ads for them. And the cool thing about that is once you've built a website once, you've got the themes, you've got the know-how, it's actually not that hard building the same genre of website again, just changing up the fonts and the colors and the vibe just to make it look a little bit different, but the underlying structure is the same. And so this is pretty easy to start. It takes about a week to learn how to make a decent looking website, but it is kind of hard getting your first client because you do have to put yourself out there and, you know, try and get some sales. But then once you've done that, making $100 is fairly easy. But again, the issue is that this is a fairly time-intensive thing because you are kind of selling your time for money. But one way you can level up the whole building websites thing is by actually specializing in building themes for other people to build websites with. So I've got a friend called Dan, who's the one who ended up sort of designing and coding my personal website. He specializes in building themes for Ghost, which is a sort of niche kind of WordPress alternative that people can use to build websites. Now, Dan builds these website themes and then he just sells them on Ghost for like $50, $100, something like that. And so he's making pretty healthy passive income every single day from people buying his website templates. And this is the perfect example of doing the work once to create a thing and then being able to sell it multiple times without any further costs of selling the thing. There's also been a new trend recently towards people building websites with Notion. Yes, Notion. Like Notion acts as a good content management system, and then you can plug it into a website like super.so, link in the video description if you want to check it out. And then people can just create a website off the back of a Notion page. And this is cool because then if you create themes for Super, then you can then sell those themes. So you're doing the work to create the Super theme once, and then you're selling it to whoever wants to convert their Notion page into looking at like a website like the theme that you've designed. Again, this takes more effort. You probably do need a bit of background in coding, HTML, CSS, making stuff look a little bit pretty, making sure the website theme actually works. But again, you know, this is making money. In order to make money, you have to provide something useful. And in this video, hopefully I'm giving you lots of examples of useful things that you can provide to people who are willing to pay for them. All right, side hustle idea number 4 is in fact social media consulting. Now, if you're watching this, then you're probably under the age of 30, which means that you probably know more about social media than people who are over the age of 30. And conveniently, it just so happens that most businesses in the world are run by people over the age of 30, and basically every business in the world needs some kind of social media presence. So just by virtue of being of a certain generation, you'll automatically have sort of by default a bit of a background in social media, and you can always learn a bit more in a weekend by just reading a ton of blog posts and watching a ton of YouTube videos. At this point, you can now advertise your services as a social media consultant. You can go to businesses in your local area or wherever who don't have a very good social media presence, and you can offer consulting to them. You can be like, hey, I specialize in social media consulting. I will give you all the advice you need to grow your Instagram or your Facebook or your LinkedIn or whatever. And then these businesses, who are generally run by people over the age of 30, would be like, oh, that's kind of cool. We need to get better at LinkedIn, but we don't know how to do it. We need to get better at Instagram, but we can't be bothered. Can you tell us what we need to do? And so you can hop on a call with them, you can give them a free half an hour, and then you can be like, yeah, sure, you know, I charged $300 a month as like a retainer fee, and that gives you one phone call every month or one Zoom call every month where I analyze your social media presence and I give you tips on what you can do. And that's pretty good because now you're getting paid on retainer for these businesses, which you're going to be actively reaching out to, and you're hopefully giving them genuinely valuable advice about growing their social media presence because you've got a skill. You've actively learnt ways to improve that skill, and now you're offering it to people who can pay for it, i.e. businesses. But then what might happen is that you might get into a point fairly quickly where businesses are like, you know what, you seem to know what you're talking about. What would it take for you to just manage our social media accounts? And at this point you can be like, well, I actually offer a fully done for you service where I will take over your social media accounts and manage them for you and help you grow your Instagram and your LinkedIn and whatever. I charge $2,000 a month for that retainer service, and for that you get 3 Instagram posts and 1 LinkedIn post every week, which I will completely sort out. All I need is just a Zoom call with you once a month to get some content off of you. And this is in fact what one of our subcontractors does, who works with us. He charges a few $1,000s a month, and we pay him to do social media consulting. And we started off paying him to do social media consulting, but then we ended up basically saying to him, hey, we actually need to do a bunch of this stuff for social media. Can you help us and actually do some of it yourself? So now Joe's built his own agency model out of this, where he does this for other clients as well. And it all started with this like young 21-year-old guy being like, hey, I know a lot about social media. Let me reach out to people who I know need help with social media, and let's figure out how I can make a business from this. So how easy is it to start? Well, if you're under the age of 30, because you already know about social media. You just need to brush up on it a little bit more and like keep track of what the latest practices and latest trends are. How easy is it to make your first $100? Again, pretty easy. I'd give this probably a 2 out of 5 stars. All you have to do is find a business, because businesses make money and businesses need a social media presence. What you don't want to do is try and target individuals who are not making money, because no individual wants to spend money to grow their social media presence. It's only a business that wants to spend money to grow their social media presence. And the cool thing in terms of time intensiveness, I'm actually going to give this like a 2 out of 5 for time intensiveness, because once you've done it once, and yes, you're trading your time for money by doing these hourly consulting gigs, but if you can get some clients and do social media management for them, suddenly you can use this whole suite of apps like Buffer and Remix and other things like that to schedule social media posts. You can use things like Canva or Photoshop or Figma to bulk create assets, so that maybe for 1 day a month, you're doing the work to kind of manage 3 social media accounts, and then you're scheduling everything to come out across that month, and then you're not having to do much more beyond that. So in terms of time intensive, like the time for money trade, it is actually pretty good. All right, side hustle idea number 5 is similar to this consultant thing, except it's going more specific, and it's to become a Notion consultant. If you're not familiar, Notion is an app that's taken the world by storm. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I've made loads of videos about it. But basically, again, lots of businesses need to have their business processes like streamlined and operationalized, and need to have stuff converted into standard operating procedures, especially if they're small businesses that have maybe somewhere between 3 and 10 employees. They probably don't have a very good system behind how they're running their business. Now, an app like Notion is absolutely fantastic for building an internal wiki and internal processes and internal standard operating procedures and stuff. And so if you can learn how to use Notion and learn a little bit about how businesses operate in terms of SOPs and structure and org chart design and all that kind of stuff, what you can then start to do is advertise your services as a Notion business consultant to local businesses. You're not giving them specific advice for their specific niche or industry. All you're doing is like taking the things they're already doing, you're going into their business, you're asking a few questions, and you're turning things into Notion pages, and you're trying to streamline their workflows. We actually have a guy who's like a Notion consultancy type person working in the team with us, who's helping us kind of revamp our content production pipeline. We're paying him a large amount of money to be able to do this because he knows a lot about Notion, and because even though me and a bunch of other team members, we know a lot about Notion as well, we just don't really have the time to think about the sort of operationalizing and systemizing of a whole structure as much as this guy does. And there's a bunch of people on Twitter doing this sort of thing. So there's Daniel Canosa, Marie Poulin, Optimization, there's August Bradley, whose YouTube channel you might be familiar with. If we look on Upwork as well, you know, Notion consulting is now a thing, and people seem to be charging around $30 to $70 an hour for Notion consulting. And again, it's not that hard to become a Notion consultant. You just need to watch a bunch of YouTube videos and play around with Notion for like a week or so, and then you'll become better at using Notion than like 99% of people using Notion who are not actively trying to improve their Notion skills. And again, it's back to our model. You have this service, which is valuable to people who are willing to pay for it, i.e. businesses, and now you're reaching out to people who might need that service, and then you can charge them money for it. Maybe you'll get your first client for free or for $100 or $20 or $30 here and there. That's totally fine. You're building up a portfolio, and then as you go to more businesses, you can say, hey, I have helped these other businesses sort of streamline the Notion, and here's a testimonial from them. Would you like me to do the same for you? And they'd be like, yeah, sure, come on in and we'll pay you some money. So how easy is it to start? And I'm gonna give this like probably a 1 out of 5. Notion is pretty easy to learn. There's tons and tons of YouTube tutorials and courses that you can take on how to get better with Notion. And just by playing around and building your own systems and stuff, you'll be able to have a working knowledge of Notion enough to be able to help businesses with it. How easy is it to make the first $100? I would give this a 1 out of 5. If people on Upwork are charging $30 to $70 an hour for Notion consulting, you can probably also do the same, provided you have decent communication. And how time intensive this is really depends on how much time you actually want to be putting in. You could just do this part-time consulting service and trade your time for money by charging, I don't know, $40 an hour or something like that. Or you could do what like Optimization and August Bradley and Marie Poulin and stuff, and sort of turn it into a whole full-time thing with like your own courses and your own consulting and packages and that kind of stuff. And then it becomes very time intensive. So it really depends on how much effort you want to put into this particular side hustle. All right, so side hustle idea number 6 is actually to become a writer for businesses or YouTubers or creators or entrepreneurs or anyone who needs stuff written for them. Now, the key thing to remember here is that business writing is not the same as like writing an essay in English literature class or in like, you know, a dissertation or anything like that. It's generally business writing is writing for clarity. So for example, let's use our orthodontist thing. Let's say you're an orthodontist in, I don't know, I was gonna say Utah, but I'm gonna use something in the UK. Let's say you're an orthodontist in Cambridge and you wanna attract clients to your orthodontist thing. Now, one way of doing that is by having a website and having a blog and doing this thing called content marketing, which is basically where you write high quality blog posts explaining stuff regarding orthodontisty type things. And then when people search orthodontist Cambridge, or they search Invisalign Cambridge or something like that, your blog post explaining the benefits of Invisalign Cambridge might come up. And so let's say you're like my orthodontist, whose name is Dr. Scriven, who is based in Anglia Orthodontics in Cambridge, and you want to increase your like website presence and search engine optimization and social media and stuff. You're probably looking to hire someone to write articles for you that explain things like how Invisalign works and how the different treatments work and what's the difference between this type of tooth thing and that type of tooth thing, like whatever the niche is. But if you're an orthodontist and you've got your own team of nurses and staff, you probably don't have time to write these articles yourself. So you'd really love to hire someone to write these articles for you. And basically every business that has a website knows that they should have blog posts where they're doing this content marketing-y type stuff. And so if you're at all good at writing with clarity rather than writing like flowerfully and like fancy and stuff, just like simple, clear, concise writing, if you're good at that sort of thing, you can then offer that service, which is valuable, to businesses who are willing to pay for the thing. It's also not just businesses who are willing to pay for that. You know, we've got 4 writers on our team right now who help writing things like, doing research for YouTube videos, writing articles for the website, helping convert like videos for our YouTuber Academy into text, helping convert stuff into tweet threads, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of writing support that bigger YouTubers need as well, because we know that we want to be across all these different platforms. But like for me, I'm spending all my time writing my book and making these videos. I don't really want to spend the time writing articles for LinkedIn as well. And so I can outsource that to someone else who can convert my YouTube videos into an article for LinkedIn, for example. To be honest, like it's probably kind of hard finding YouTubers who are at that size that they want to do this thing and hire someone for the website. But basically all businesses with a website would be very willing to have a content writer as a freelancer, as a part-time thing, who can write them high quality articles that'll help them rank for SEO. And so how easy is this to get started? I would say probably a 2 out of 5. You need to, again, I would just use the permissionless apprentice model. I would find like a niche, maybe orthodontist in your local area or dentist in the local area, or I don't know, private cosmetic surgeons in the local area, and say to them, like, hey, I'm a writer, I specialize in writing articles for this. Here is an example of an article that I could write for you. All I would need is half an hour of your time once a month where I can just mine content ideas from you, and then I'll turn those into articles, which will be great for your social media, it'll be great for your website, great for your LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. How easy is it to make your first $100? Well, once you found that client through the permissionless apprentice model, then making your first $100 should be pretty easy, because again, we are targeting businesses who have money. Really, when it comes to building or any of these side hustles, we don't want to be trying to target people who don't have money. So for example, if I was thinking of a new side hustle, there is no point in me targeting 13-year-olds, because 13-year-olds famously do not have money. Whereas if I was targeting 33-year-old business owners, those guys definitely do have money. And so I can target them, and in like a nice way, not in a weird way, and they're the ones who are able and willing to pay me for the service. Side hustle idea number 7 is to start a paid email newsletter. Now, I was going to talk about this in depth, but this video has already gone on long enough. And so if you want to find out more about this, I've actually interviewed a bunch of people who have made a living through writing in various forms. And those interviews are from live streams that I did back in lockdown, and all of those are available on Nebula. Now, if you haven't heard, Nebula is an independent streaming platform that's built by me and a bunch of other creators. And on Nebula, we can put content like long ass videos like this one without having to worry about stuff being too niche or too long for the YouTube algorithm. And so on Nebula, I have like a bunch of interviews from writers and entrepreneurs and creators that I did during lockdown that you can see in their entirety. And I've got a bunch of other exclusive content on Nebula, including my workflow series, which shows how I use the apps Notion and Roam to like optimize my workflow for productivity and creativity. Now, the best way to get access to Nebula is to sign up to a subscription of CuriosityStream, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. If you haven't heard, CuriosityStream is the world's leading documentary streaming subscription platform. And on CuriosityStream, they've got thousands of high quality, high budget documentaries from all sorts of topics, from science and technology to religion to history to food to everything in between. And because CuriosityStream love independent creators, we've actually got a bundled deal with Nebula, so that if you sign up for CuriosityStream, which is less than $15 for the whole year, you get free access to Nebula bundled with that. And so for less than $15, you get access to these thousands of amazing high quality documentaries, and you also get access to a bunch of exclusive content from me and a bunch of other creators that you might be familiar with. If that sounds good, then head over to curiositystream.com/Ali, and if you sign up there, then your login details for Nebula will be emailed to you, and then you can check out all of these like live stream interviews that I've done with all these writers, creators, entrepreneurs, online builders about how they made money, how they built their brands, and how they did all the cool stuff that they now do. So those were 6 and a bit side hustle ideas that you can start in 2022. If you like this, you might like to check out that video, which is 9 passive income ideas. That's the video that went viral last year that had loads and loads of comments and replies to it. So thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button if you aren't already, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye-bye.